So we can start with Antoine.
Hello, everybody. My name is Antoine Aslan. I'm the Senior Manager of Resettlement and Settlement Services at Association for New Canadians. We predominantly focus on government-assisted refugees and their settlement integration in St. John's, Newfoundland.
I'm David Brake. I'm on the board of Happy City, but I also run a Central Transit Association, and I'm on the board of Transport Action Atlantic. Those are the two organizations principally I'm representing, and I've been lobbying to get improvements to public transit for about 5 or 6 years now.
Hi folks, my name is Mary Feltham, pronouns they, them, or she, her is fine too, and I am the chairperson for the Canadian Federation of Students for Newfoundland and Labrador. It is a national non-for-profit organization that represents students in public post-secondary institutes, and in Newfoundland, all of our public institutes are a part of the union. So I represent and advocate for the concerns of students across the province, and transportation is a very real one.
Hey folks, my name is Jawad Chowdhury. I am the Director of Campaigns for Mansu. As someone who uses public transport and works a lot with students, I'm here to learn and share my feedback and my thoughts on solutions that can improve accessibility among students.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, panelists. So now the floor is open, and if anybody has any questions or suggestions for public transit.
Well, if you don't have a question, then we have drafted some of our own questions and we'd like to ask those.
So anybody on the panel, feel free to share your suggestions, but same with the audience as well. So the first thing that we were looking at during this project is Route 24 and 26 are the least used routes, but those are all express one routes. So how can they be made better for students?
I feel like that's something I should be saying, but I will give disclosure. I've been in St. John's for about a month, so I do not know the transit system very well. I come here with a bit more of a provincial-wide knowledge. I was in Corner Brook for the last 4 years, and our public transit there was 7 a.m. until 6 p.m. Monday to Friday. And other places across the province, there is no public transit. So it is a concern that students say. I don't have the knowledge of how we can improve it, except for the fact that I did meet with a student last week, and they said that their best experience with the Metro bus was with the Zip line, the new Zip line, saying how it was so consistent. It was like the ideal transportation, 15 minutes, something like that. So if we looked at implementing the Zip for the routes that are specific to Memorial, that may help allow the students to avail of the line in a bit better way to their needs.
Absolutely. I want to echo what Mary's saying here. The zip lining and accessibility to those roads are a big question, and I'm not sure how many students even have access to those routes or have those routes near their houses so that they can take the bus to the university. So I believe, some sort of a streamlining of those routes or increasing stops may help, or even introducing other express routes where there's more student density may help.
Very, very briefly, and I'll enlarge on it later, but in my view, the best way you can get better student transit is to get better transit. That you need to find a way to pull together other stakeholders with whom you share a vision and a need, and that is the way that and I've seen with things like there are MUN shuttles. I would love to see MUN, or indeed CNA, if it runs any shuttles, I'm not sure, stop funding individual stopgap measures to fill a particular need and start looking at ways in which that those resources can be pooled for the benefit of students, but also for everyone else. If that money went towards a shuttle that ordinary people could also get on, how much better would that be?
Yeah, just to add to that point, I work with the shuttle working group at MUN as well. There is a shuttle that goes from McPherson to Signal Hill campus to Marian Institute, but that's being restructured now. MUN is entering a partnership with Metrobus to structure that program, collaborate with Route 15 so that there's an express service from MUN to Signal Hill campus and MI campuses. It's a pilot program for the next 4 months, and it's going to I don't know the exact cost structure, but it's going to cost students a lot of money, and they're also expecting public to use the service.
I'm going to ask about perhaps the most dreaded part of St. John's as it goes for public transit, that being Kenmount Road. If you want to get there, it's fairly not convenient. Like, my routes are usually always upwards of an hour or more just to get to the top of Kenmount Road, and I live over by the Village Mall, which would normally be a 10, 15-minute drive. So what is the public transit solutions to an urban fixture that's largely designed around cars and not public transportation?
Well, in my opinion, end of the day, what we look at is demand and supply. So we have to encourage and advocate for more people to use public transit for those stops to increase the demand so that St. John's Metrobus will be able to see and analyze the data they gathered to increase their stops and frequencies to those places.
Yeah, I also think this is a very, very important question. This is something we should absolutely be bringing up with Metrobus, because if you look at the structure of Kenmount Road, it also has a lot of offices. So if you're not letting professionals or young professionals to access public transport, how are you going to retain the customer base that you have now? And so it's a very important question about the future of Metrobus for sure.
I'm just wondering if the folks, particularly student reps on the panel, could speak a little bit to student representation on Metrobus Transit Commission, or how transit in the city gets the perspective of students and newcomers as well in particular. If that's just an issue-based piece, or if there's always an open dialogue there.
Thank you so much for the question.
I can speak quickly. Again, the specifics with St. John's, I'm less informed with, but I do know that, Jawad and I had met with Ian Froud, words, in preparation for this, and he was quite receptive to continuing the conversation and meeting with students to expand on how we can find solutions for folks like returning to the UPass, and how we can expand on what was offered previously and why it was unsuccessful, and how we can make it successful. I believe Jawad has also mentioned about there being a group on campus that discusses, or a rep. Is that you can definitely correct me. I'm most likely incorrect, but I know in Corner Brook that there is a rep that meets with the city. Pam Gill is the counselor, and there is an elected person from the Grenfell Campus Student Union, not with CNA. That should be something we should look into. But with the memorial aspect, there is someone for that side of the province.
Yeah, from a Mansu perspective, we do not have a representative with Metrobus, but meeting with municipal government always opens up an opportunity for dialogue, and we would like to continue that dialogue. When we met with the councillor, he specifically mentioned how they are looking for more student data and more student engagement in public transport. There is an opportunity for dialogue now, particularly with everyone being so interested in bringing back the UPass discussion. I think there's just a lot of opportunity for wider student consultation.
Thank you. This is just a suggestion, not only to the panels, but everyone here. I was thinking, what if there was a better Metrobus app where you could track the buses, like how you can see in Uber or DoorDash, where the vehicle is at a specific time. I know there is Metrobus apps, but I was thinking if it could be improved.
I think I can speak to that one. It's a bit of a puzzle to me, frankly. There is a Metrobus app. I'm not sure how many of you use it. It does allow you to track buses in real time, but it's a terrible app. Unfortunately, there are many good apps for transit, but and you can use them, but they don't track the buses. So it's kind of between two stools. What Metrobus needs to do, of course, is to make the data of its real time open. But I see a hand from someone who might know more than I about what's going on there.
No, I was simply going to ask if anybody within the college or university, from a technical standpoint, vast sea of knowledge, students up and coming, the students, I feel, should be leveraging their own knowledge to advise the city and advise government because they don't know. They simply don't know. So on the side of Metrobus, it's simply, from an IT perspective, asks them for their data on how they log it. That should be it, and make it is publicly available if you scroll the website. So it's just, my question for you guys would be, why not ask the students? Why not ask your architectural programs, your engineering programs, your sociology programs at MUN? Ask those students to do programs to do the studies, help the college, and then, or help the city, help the government understand. Because honestly, every time I've dealt with, I've done work with Dave with Happy City. The government's just not smart.
Well, I would say it's occasionally smart. It's not motivated to put energy into it. You guys have energy and time and expertise. And so if you just hand them the answer on a plate, they might pick it up.
Absolutely. I think, the city and Metrobus do need some motivation, but when it comes to technical know-how, the city already and Metrobus does it with GoBus. You can track GoBus buses on an app. So the city knows how to do it. It's just there's a lack of interest to do it.
I just want to make sure that I also get Antoine's answer about newcomers and if that communication line is open with Metrobus or the city and newcomers using the bus.
Honestly, myself, I started using the Metrobus app a couple of days ago. Initially, you have to download 2 apps to be able to access it. So you have to, which is, I don't know. But in terms of our newcomers, not a lot of them are tech savvy, and English is not their first language. So I would, in addition to improving the accuracy of the Metrobus and having real-time tracking systems, it would be better to incorporate, for example, foreign languages. So individuals who do not speak English as their first language will be able to access it better.
Hi there. I was going to try to get a show of hands from the audience of who came here on the bus. Okay. And then I was going to ask each of you guys, if I could, just to tell us the top 3 reasons quickly why the rest of us didn't.
I can say the reasons why I know I didn't. I'm so confused by the service. I do not know how to, and it doesn't go to where I live. I live on Mount Pearl, and I live on the edge of Mount Pearl, which is right next to Kenmount, and there's still no access. So those are my top 2. The third is I also don't have change on me. So mildly inaccessible to not have cash.
As a first year student, I used the bus a lot, but then just like Mary, I got super confused as to what's happening, what my schedule looks like. Because if I had to go somewhere at 2, I would maybe need to get out at 12, which was not convenient enough. So I switched to becoming a pedestrian. That worked way better. Like I walked to places way faster than I got there in buses. And that's how it's been for me since I moved to Center City. I just can walk quicker than a bus can get me there. And so, I don't use that. But also what Mary said, as a pedestrian, if I even want to use the bus sometimes, there's an accessibility when it comes to change. And so, some sort of digital payment system, even though I know that's coming, it's in the talks. And I hope it's here soon enough. So, it's more convenient to use the bus if you just want to. Yeah, I don't really have a third reason, but yeah, I'm just confused.
Personally, for myself, I came to Canada in 2019, towards the end of 2019, right before Snowmageddon. So I had first-hand experience of using the Metro bus. I come from United Arab Emirates, a country that is really warm, and it's like 45 degrees across the year. We have a really good bus system over there. There is air-conditioned bus stops at every stop. There was real-time tracking. So when I came over here, I started using the Metro bus, and it was the timings, the frequencies were so low. I've never been in a country where a bus stops at 7 o'clock. in UAE, it's 24-hour service, so they have frequencies at all hours of the day and night. For me, it was the weather and the lack of sheltered bus stops. It was the frequency of the buses, long wait times. And I personally had an experience where I was at Health and Science Center and I had to wait for an hour and a half for a bus that was scheduled to arrive within 15 minutes of me getting to the bus stop. So those were my reasons. And I believe it's a lot of newcomers and government refugees who come here from different countries. They experience these challenges.
I just want to add to that a little bit. And this may be a little off the tracks, but I read this beautiful article in The Independent called A Love Letter to the Public Transportation System in St. John's. And it says how, high school students save up till their graduation, buy a car, and then take trips to Signal Hill. It just shows like, it just shows that, wherever people want to go, the bus does not go there. It's completely different. If you look at some of the other Canadian cities like Montreal, they have their own version of Signal Hill, I guess, Montreal or whatever. But if you want to get on top of Montreal, there's a bus that will take you on top of Montreal, and it's very different for St. John's. And so those not servicing areas that people really want to go to, or just the accessibility to Metrobus isn't there for it to be used enough. When we talked to Councillor Frood last week, he mentioned why Metrobus does not travel to Mount Paradise School, CBS. It's because Metrobus is owned by City of St. John's. And so if Mount Pearl wants to take the bus, it would have to pay the City of St. John's. And so, that creates a real barrier. And I think what we need as a solution to that is the province, the provincial government showing more interest in the public transportation system here and taking that over, right?
Yeah, so to add to that, when I've dealt with Metrobus, specifically with St. John's, yes, they are St. John's funded. Their budget's around $22 million. That's roughly 7% of St. John's municipal budget. Mount Pearl spends 3% of their budget, and Paradise spends 0.2. CBS spends 0, and they are committed to spending a small unknown amount. Grand Falls is committing to spending 3 or 4% to actually get, Grand Falls, Happy Valley Goose Bay. And Cornbrook spends about 4%. So it's simply that municipalities don't integrate with a regional, like there is no regional system for handling transit, like you have HFX in Halifax, or you have regional in Toronto. York deals with TTC, all those. So having Mount Pearl and Paradise be able to snowball the own system, like to get to Galloway to the back end of Paradise, you could walk it in 45 minutes. It takes almost 3 hours if you play your cards wrong. And because you're correct that the provincial government needs to tell the municipalities in the Northeast Avalon, you must pay. You must commit to this and at least put in 3%. That you could generate that with just like a 0.2 mil rate increase. And that would be an easy funding. And on a fun note, the Avalon Mall generates around $7 to $9 million in taxes a year. That's almost half of Metro's budget from one building. So it depends on how they assess the property and the entire Crombie properties. The entire area is worth around $500 million. That's almost half of Metro's budget. So it's not that hard to generate more budget with more dense and high value properties.
I want to stay with the solutions focus here for a sec. You are, to a large extent, the solution to this problem. You may not realize it, but you are, because, a lot of the people who make these decisions are people who have for decades been well off enough to have and use cars, and they just don't have the perspective of people who, for example, are used to having a functioning transit system and think that that's what they'll get when they come here. Or, I mean, and many international students maybe likewise, or students and young people who are waking up to the fact that having to spend $10,000 or so a year to run a car, there are in principle other ways that they can spend that money. But they need to hear it from you. They're tired of hearing it from me. They need to hear from a new generation of people say, I know it seems like it's been okay for so long, but times are changing and we would like to have some action. And it's not just the government here. There are just from sitting in this particular spot and looking at the way that UPass was tried to be sorted out, there were only two actors in the room: Metrobus and MUN and MUNSU. I guess three if you count that. But CNA, for I'm not sure what reason, was not really involved, or they tried to get them involved. They weren't that interested. Eastern Health, just down the road, could hugely benefit from having decent public transit in and out of the major hospital in this region, wasn't involved. And of course, plenty of civil servants up on the Confederation building there. Like the province, even at that level of having provincial employees involved in perhaps having some kind of provincial employee UPass, all of that didn't happen. But a UPass, which was part funded by all of those partners, would have a decent shot at being reasonable for students, but also at attracting a larger number of people and stakeholders into the bus system. Once you mainstream the idea that public transit is something that isn't a little minority interest, but once that becomes something where lots of people have an interest in making it work, then everyone, including you students, would benefit. So I urge you to talk to your friends, talk to your parents, perhaps if they're here, and raise the level of discussion. Start a discussion, but then just make it clear that this is something that you value and that you think should be something that you can take for granted as a service that is provided jointly by these people. Because at present, it seems to be something of an optional extra that they throw in. So, but it can be done. I think actually the winds of change and the cost of living crisis that we're all hearing about will help you make your case. Representatives and organizations like MUN and CNA just need to know that you consider this to be important.
I'm going to do the quickest little shout out to follow up on that, just very, very quick. You definitely should listen. Yes, I'm trying to echo everything you said. And if you resonate with it and are empowered to get involved, you should probably join the Social Justice Co-op of Newfoundland and Labrador. They have a challenging car culture group. So when we are united and advocate together, we get things done. So just a little plug right there. Thank you.
To follow up on that, I am just curious, is there a conversation between the student groups such as CFS or MUNSU to kind of form a protest with people in the city to advocate for better public transit? Has that been considered, like one outside of Confederation building, for example?
A direct protest, we always consider protests. But our first line is to sit down with those who make the decisions, give them the information that we have, and try to get them to understand the gravity of how their decisions are impacting us. I definitely love the suggestion. I know that folks are always eager to rally, and it's something that could be considered in the future when they inevitably don't listen to us because that seems to be a theme. But I know there has been, that was I think 2020 or 2021, there was a lobby document on transportation presented to some government officials on 2021. Yeah, thank you. I'm bad with dates. On how we can improve the Metro bus specifically and among other issues. And I don't know if you have other things to add.
Yeah, that's pretty much everything. But looking at the gravity of how inaccessible money is, how high the housing market is right now, just like you mentioned, and there not being enough data about students, those conversations definitely need to happen. Students need to have a better presence when it comes to municipal decisions. And I think it's high time we get involved in those discussions. It's definitely coming, and it's a good sign that the municipal government is now talking to us. They're interested in collaborating. They're interested to work together, and I think down the line we will always have something. But just like Mary said, protest is always in our cards. We're always down to do it. Yes.
This question is more like long-term focus. Like public transit is by and large catered and centered around the ways in which our cities and municipalities are built and structured. So I guess in any of your experience, is there any discussion or consultation surrounding, I guess, the ways in which we build our cities, or perhaps can or I don't know what term to use, but change the way our cities are? Because, St. John's does not have a conventional grid pattern. So I guess maybe down the line, 10, 15 years from now, is there a potential ever open dialogues for a long-term project that either increases density, creates more roads that don't look like this, that can sort of, I guess, improve public transit down the line when you have a city that's really designed for it?
It's interesting. I get you. The council is committed somehow, and I think somehow is the key word, to shift people more towards active transportation and transit. And there is a sort of, I think there's a broad consensus in principle that there should be more density. But if you then look at what comes out, because there are various stakeholders and lobbyists involved, the change is glacially slow, sadly. So, like, as much as anything else, holding whether it be the council or the province or what have you, to account, to live up to the things that they will say that they would like to do is the key there. But I do want to caution you. You will hear, because of our street layout, because of the way things have been, that St. John's transit, we can't make it really very good because, it's complicated. I don't feel that you should let that lie, because, if you've been to Europe at all, have you seen their streets? It's not, none of this is actually rocket science. And if you look at, it's an easy example to make, but I'll use it. You look at the amount of money being spent on adding an additional turnoff to Galway on the highway would be enough to double the spending on transit for a year. If you look at extending the Tingushu Highway, that could set up a decent regional transit system. The sums involved, compared to the amount of benefit you could get from having a transit system that was appealing to a broad range of people, are really not large. The difficulties are not that big. The amount, sadly, when you start from a base this low, it doesn't take very much to improve it a great deal. We have one bus shelter for every 20 bus stops. If you improve that to, say, 1 in 5, imagine, even without, you wouldn't need to hire a lot of extra people or run a lot of extra buses. That would already be a huge difference. If you had an enclosed bus depot somewhere, aside from that sort of corner of MUN where you can hang sometimes, if you had an enclosed space that was warm where you could wait for buses, even if you didn't change the frequency, you'd still have a much better bus service. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit there. It's just a question of presenting it and advocating for it and bringing on board the many other constituent groups who have a similar interest to your own, whether it be elderly people who increasingly won't be allowed to or don't feel they should drive because of various things that happen when you get older, other people with disabilities who aren't elderly, just make your own voice heard and work with others and give me a call. And it can happen. And don't let anyone tell you it can't be done because St. John's or it can't be done because Newfoundland. It can. It was done decades ago before all this mess and it can be done again.
Yeah, I also just want to echo that. I think, where St. John's has such a big student population, the population retention, economic growth, and diversity is very, very important for this city to hold on to. And I think that needs to be done. People here that have moved here love this city and would like to stay here more. And for that to happen, they deserve a better transit system.
For a city council to be able to put more financial resources into a public transit system, there has to be support from the population at large. And I'm wondering if there's a way, and the media would certainly have a role in this, on educating the public about the benefits to everybody, even people who don't take public transit, from having a well-funded, efficient, and convenient public transit system. And I wonder if any of you have any thoughts on what could be done to educate the public, because I can tell you that was one part of my platform that I did not get a lot of engagement on, at least in Ward 1 during that. And, this would cost money, which means a mill rate. Even if you talk a 0.2 mills or whatever, at the door, there is a lot of resistance to any idea of raising taxes. So people need to see the benefit. So how do we teach people the benefit?
I have something that might sound like a tangent, but I promise it makes sense. I feel like the greatest way to help spread education is by ensuring that we have free education for all. If we promote having education that is inclusive, we know that folks live healthier, robust lives, and they have the means and abilities to make more informed decisions. So when we invest in education, we have people who have a way of obtaining the knowledge that way. We also know that we're also going to see an increase in income in our province. I don't know what year it was, bad at years, but there was a report done that said for every dollar that the provincial government put into CNA, they saw an $11 return. So in that way, we could also be seeing an investment in how we can improve the public transportation across the entire province, not just within the Avalon. That seems like a tangent, but just put that free education out there.
Funny you should say free. I'm not wedded to the idea, but I do think, considering that, and you may not be aware, only about roughly a third of what you would pay at the fee, roughly 2/3 of the cost of your trip is not covered by what you pay. It's covered by various forms of government support. So, to my mind, actually making it free, strange as it might sound, would be a positive thing, because the cost of the cost per passenger served, when you had so many more passengers going in, would actually be lower. You'd end up benefiting more people with the amount of money you're spending to run the buses anyway. A full bus costs very little more to run than an empty one. But it would also crucially help get people who hadn't thought about taking the bus onto it to discover its value. I'm not wedded to the idea, but it is something that I think ought to be considered, and it certainly has been done to great effect in other places, both in Europe and in the States. But I think you don't generally get, well, tell me if I'm, when I found it, because I did a bit of doorstep work, I don't find a lot of people against having a better bus service, especially if you do present it to them as it would cost you, $2 a year or something on your bill. My concern is that it simply doesn't come up because people have lost faith that anything could be done about it. Like, it's not on people's radar because they've given up in advance and feel like they have to then find a way around it, which is typically mooching a ride off a friend or family or buying a beater. And I'm here to say another way is possible, but only if you make it clear that you think that one should be possible and that you expect better. And you tell people, and you make it plain that, yes, you might be satisfied with the idea that when I was a lad, that's what you had to do. But times are changing, your pocketbooks are pinched, and you would like to see a real alternative to that. And don't be put off by it can't be done, because a little pocket calculator work will show you're not asking for great sacrifices here from anyone. And in fact, if it were free and well funded, as I've experienced in other countries, all of a sudden people would wake up and go, oh, well, yeah, actually, no, I would like it to be like this, and I would actually like it to be better. But if it's something that you're asking people for money for, and they would never even think of using it or may not even be aware that it exists, it's much harder to get backing. So,
Absolutely. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, a little bit. So I completely agree what others have to say on this, and it's I think the best way to educate people is to have them engaged in the system, and so even the silly idea of making transportation free during 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the evening, that can go a long way. When people start using it, there's more people engaged with the bus system. Those people will defend for more funding on public transport. Those people will advocate themselves for more investment on, just accessibility around the city. And so, I think that's very important as to how the city is looking to sort of get people on the bus and educate them that way. The hands-on learning, experiential learning. That's what it is. That's the right word.
It took me 2 hours of my life to go back and forth every day to school. So, do you guys have any solutions for that, or to make the service, a little bit more faster, easier?
I mean, it does. You're correct in realizing the absurdity of this. The kind of money, it's money. That's all it is. The city has a mandate, which it is successfully following, that most of the population is near enough walk to a bus stop, which means I hope it is not the case, but it does mean that they can kind of wash their hands. They can say, look, we have a transport service. Now, the problem is, in order to do that, you have routes which, as you'll have experienced, for example, go in a big loop or go in a weird zigzag or whatever, because it's not about speed, it's about covering everyone. And that's all it's about for a lot of it. We talk about express buses. Well, an express bus costs more because, you only pick up people at each end. And if it's an express bus that covers a regular route, then it adds zero value because you're not covering any additional people according to that model. So yeah, it's a money thing. And I would just like to reiterate what other people have been. There has been a lot of talk about the city, and it's not perfect, but it isn't really a city problem because they're trying to sort it out on their own, and because it's a regional issue, and it's being, and as others have pointed out, it's being funded by St. John's. So yes, if you are in, would like to live in or have family in CBS, Torbay, surrounding communities, if you hear about places to rent that you would have liked to have rented, but you can't because you can't reach them, they are some of the organizations and people and so on that need to hear about that. But yes, it's not because they can't figure it out, it's because they can't afford to do it within the realm, the realms of the possible at the city.
Just to add, I think I would also like to see, I know you said that they can't, it's not that they can't figure it out, but I would love to see more consultation, especially with anyone who is interested in using it and students. So reaching out to the student unions to be like, can you afford this to your members? Being like, where do you live currently? Around what time do you need to use the bus? What building do you need to be at? I don't know the proper grammar anymore. But things like that, so they can have more insight of where they need to put the investments, I think would be really important. And also the note of the DRL of maybe also doing something more than just having to leave at 8 a.m. because if people finish schooling one day, they have to stay a whole other day before leaving. So I'm just trying to also, I know we're here for St. John's because we're here and that's totally valid, but also recognizing my friends across the province, we're struggling very much. But on the bright side of Corner Brook, there's only 2 routes, so it's not as confusing.
Yeah, just also to add to that, when we met, when we met the councillor last week, we asked about what their future plan was with all the federal funding that's coming in, and there's $27 million that's coming in, and it's actually going to change, or Metrobus is utilizing that money to change their fleet and order a bunch of hybrid buses. While I agree that we do need hybrid buses, we need more environment-friendly transit system. The problem is we don't have a system. And so we would need a system first to replace it. And so I think, when it comes to spending money wisely, I think it should be spent on getting that system up and running and then changing fleets to hybrid, electric, whatever it takes.
Or indeed for buses at all. There are 2 different pockets, capital and operating. You can get lots of federal money to buy a bus or shelter or what have you, a computer system. You can get none for running the buses, putting drivers in it. So they won't buy any more buses than they have drivers for, because that's where a lot of the costs are. At least with a hybrid bus, the costs of running it should go down because of, and eventually with the electric ones, they are looking at all electric buses as well. Those running costs will decline, but a lot of it's just drivers. Sorry.
I mean, there's a reason we elect public representatives for, and that's to advocate on things like that and to change the way system functions. So there's always room.
No, definitely. And to echo everybody, my co-panelists, advocation is the key. Looking at the Metrobus app, what is St. John's populations and what is the population of people using the bus? If you look at it, there's 43 feedbacks on the app from the population. So we need more advocation. Your voices need to be heard for change to happen.
Is there any kind of regional system that's coming into place in St. John's, or any talk about it?
I don't know if there's any talk about it or if it's coming to St. John's, but it brings me back to an initial point that I made about the provincial government showing more interest on the public transportation system here around the province, not just in St. John's, but in CBS, in Goulds, in Mount Pearl, in Paradise, and I think that needs to happen. When the provincial government takes an interest in public transport, it's forced to be improved. There's no more passing the buck to, Mount Pearl does not have this because they did not pay for it. Well, there needs to be someone to look after it all. There needs to be an overarching organization, and the provincial government really needs to come in.
In fairness to the provincial government, I wouldn't want anyone to think that no provincial funding comes to transit. There is. There is I think 10% of the operating budget that is provided by the province, around 2 million out of it, to fund the low income pass for free travel. But the bar is set very low. You have to sadly be very poor to avail of that. And they also will shell out for capital expenditures from buses because the feds won't give the cities any money unless the province also gives them money. So, but again, capital, not operating, and no strategic oversight. As far as the province is concerned, it's a city thing to have bus service, which DRL, I'm not sure if you're aware, is a private company. The reason why there isn't more DRL is because there's no maybe one of the only provinces where there is no provincial or public intercity service at all. You can ask me after about the fact that the bus system that DRL now has was meant to replace the railway and be a public bus service in perpetuity, which then hasn't happened. But yeah, that's a whole different can of worms.
Or what can we do to Metrobus to improve affordability for people and to improve upon the determinants of health for folks? Sorry, that was very long-winded.
I'd like to hear the ANC actually tell it, because the ANC has more heft than most of it. I'd like to see you guys stand up and say, you know, this is something that we keep hearing, and people who come here are baffled by the fact that they can't get around and it's costing people, and then they leave. Like, you probably have that evidence, and maybe you're saying it behind the scenes, but that's probably what.
So the free pass system, we do have free pass for our clients. Initially, when government assisted refugee is brought to St. John's, they're given resettlement. They're brought here through the resettlement assistance program, which is a federally funded program. They get monthly income through the feds for the duration of 12 months. After the 12 months, they transition into income support where they're presented with a free pass. We have seen within our client group that having access to that free pass increases their usage of the Metro Transit system tenfold, and they stay on it. With our clients who have really high medical needs, we are in talks with our community partners and Eastern Health. We do have GoBus, which is provided to our clients, which does help a lot, but like advocacy is needed in these terms, and we need to improve that.
So the first question is, what made the U-Pass fail the first time, and essentially, like, how can we fix it? And then the second question is, how can we make the public transport system more accessible to immigrants or New St. John's residents? So I feel like that one's for this half, and the other one's for that half. So,
To speak on the U-Pass first. One of the original reasons U-Pass failed was because there was no opt-out method to the fee that students were paying in. And I believe it was $138 at the time. It may be plus or minus a couple dollars. But you know, you pay $138, you get free bus service for the entirety of the semester. That was the deal. And there's no opt-out. So you just pay into university fees. And I think, you know, that's what did not attract students. But again, if you look at it, having an opt-out system or have to opt in is what we have currently. You know, you need to buy a bus pass, opt in to the transportation system, sort of. But, you know, when you enroll students or any population into a certain program and then give them the option to opt out, statistics shows that a lot less people opt out of things. So, you know, I believe this is a risk worth taking, but that is also a conversation with Metrobus if they're willing to take that risk, because that's probably one of the best ways to explain to students, to sell this idea to students that, you know, if you want to, you can obviously walk away from this, but at the start of the semester, we will give you a bus pass that, you know, it could be incorporated in your student ID. It may be a separate card, whatever it is. But, you know, at the beginning of the semester, everyone gets something, and then you have an option to opt out. I think that's a better risk taking.
To also quickly elaborate or expand on it, in addition to the opt-out issues, there was this new fee and there was not a lot of definitive plans of how it's going to help students specifically. So it was very much like, oh, we want to improve the bus system. St. John's has all these ideas. How are we going to do it? Well, there's a lot of students at MUN. We'll make them pay for it. So it was like putting more funds and fees on the backs of students, and we're already facing so many other fee increases. There were some suggestions on like increasing frequency of routes, but again, there's such a large population of students out in, I believe you had said before, the Goulds?
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
and there's
spread
no,
out.
like, and there's no bus at all in the Goulds. So how do we do that? Yeah.
And universities, colleges, even in St. John's or closer to St. John's are so spread out. It's almost difficult to have them all by one string because it's just weird geography, but that's how it is, and we need to build around it. We need to be adaptive of the system that we have and work around it.
Just for those that don't know, like I buy a semester pass every semester, every 4 months, and that's $270, right? So you're looking at almost double, right? So that's just comparison's sake. So I think definitely the opt-out measure, like you said, for those that do not want the additional fee is necessary, but would be a lifeline for those that regularly purchase it.
Absolutely. And that is one of the reasons we're really interested in the UPass, because it benefits us more than it disadvantages some students. It definitely benefits a large number of students, newcomers, international students, and just in general, it increases your chances. It gives you more opportunity to find employment somewhere else, and still be able to get there with a fee that you have paid with your tuition fee. It just makes everything more convenient. And one reason why we are so interested in it, one reason why you'd see a lot of other universities are so interested in it. And some of them actually have UPass integrated with their tuition fees, which is great.
I should say that is actually what the U is in the title, universal. And yes, many universities in Canada and elsewhere have such a pass. And yes, there was some fairly detailed plans for what the money that would have gone into UPass would have accomplished. But because, unless I'm mistaken, I think the entirety of the improvements would have been paid for through the student contribution to UPass, they were not as big as they could be. Now, MUN has, and the reason why MUN was active in doing it, MUN has a real interest in their students using public transport because it means that they don't have to maintain lots of additional parking spaces, and their students are happier, and they can. There are many good reasons why MUN, for example, I've heard. I did some immigration related stuff, and I heard from an employer who could not get staff for their service that opens at 8 or earlier because the staff could get there, to the point where they had to rent their own properties so that the workers could get there. There are there's a superficial cost to running a transport service. To my mind, the key is to demonstrate there are so many benefits to there being one, but the benefits are all diffuse. Now, for example, the ANC must have a budget which it spends on providing those shuttle buses and providing the free pass. The feds provide towards the free passes, but presumably there's not 100% and so on. If all of the slivers of money and resources that are being used to run shuttle buses by MUN, to have ANC paying and paying for taxis to get people to medical appointments and to their English classes and all these vital services, if those groups could all get together and present, as it were, the province with the bill and say, please, take this off our hands so that we don't have to run a medical transport service. We don't have to run a shuttle bus. Our employees, we don't have to rent places for them close to the place of work or pay taxis for them. And our students can find jobs, and our students can come into the city more often so that they can go to restaurants and they can get drunk without having to worry about paying for a taxi or having, all of these things together is what pays for a public transit system that works, right? It's not a sunk cost by people who aren't rich enough to buy cars like regular people. We spend so much of our money and resources in this province getting around the fact that we don't have a thing we should have in the first place.
Absolutely. And I believe it comes through unity. Everybody has to be unified, and we have to put a unified at the front to the politicians and advocate on our behalf and on our people, because at the end of the day, we want the best interests of everybody. May it be students, newcomers, normal newfies. As my co-panelist echo with everything that he said, that yes, we do want to be at a point that we don't have to send taxis to our clients for them to be able to go to the medical appointments because there is no buses available, or they have to wait 2 hours to get the bus back and forth.
But also, Antoine, you had mentioned about the ANC providing buses. I'm wondering if you're familiar with, and if you're not, that's okay. If you're familiar with any other settlement service providers across Canada that provide transportation, is that very common or is that uncommon?
No, unfortunately, it's not very common. It is actually very uncommon because, at the end of the day, what we want is our clients to be relying on the Metro Transit. Because if we provide buses and taxis and we keep on funding these services, they won't be able to using the transit service, and hence the transit service won't have the funds to be able to improve their systems and services. So our goal is to get our clients to get on the Metro Transit as soon as possible.
Just to add to that, Mansu does run shuttle service called Safe Drive with GSU, and it's only operational during the fall and winter, and we see a large number of people every day that we operate, almost to the point where we are now considering buying a few other vehicles for that service. It's because students can't really rely on the public transportation system, even though we want them to. They don't feel safe getting home from point A, getting home late at night from the library or whatever. Our disabled students can't really access Go Bus if they don't book it a day prior. And so, we offered the service, but, it comes at a very, very big cost for the union. We would love for the public transportation system to improve, and we would love to stop those sort of interfering into public transportation, but that's sadly not happening. And as time goes by, we see services like Safe Drive really grow in popularity.
Well, here's a challenge for you, and it just occurred to me now. Could anybody who is listening to this now in this room, who is having to spend money to help other people to do the thing they need to do, just let the students know, let me know, and we can start adding it up? Because I think nobody's adding this up. We have a sense, but maybe if we just literally presented the tab, there would be a sense that people would then understand where all the little bits here and there are coming from.
I'm going to go back to a question for you guys specifically. You have many clients at the ANC, I presume?
Yep.
Hundreds, maybe 1,000?
Thousands. Yep.
Thousands of MUN SU, 22,000 students at MUN and the Grenfell campus and all that. You guys, can you easily collect data? Could you query everybody and say, simple form, in the run of a week, where do you go? How often do you go? Where do you go? How often do you go? Present that to the city. Present that to, you mentioned you're with the NDP caucus. Present it to government officials in a way that they can digest. Because I can tell you, I work with transportation engineering. I deal with transportation works on a regular basis. They don't know and don't care. They do not have information. They don't. We have 2 traffic sensors in the city, in Metro St. John's, and they're both on the highway. They don't even publish the data. As far as I know, the sensor just sits there reading data. Nobody even checks it. As far as I know, when I was there before, it was like 4 years before someone looked at the logs. Like, they don't know where people are moving. They don't know. And that's an excellent opportunity for you guys to use a massive leverage of students to just provide a wealth of data they don't have. And you're talking about, like, if you guys know 30% of your constituents in your organizations don't even have Metro Bus access, that's good information. So I'd be asking you guys to collect it and find a way to get it. Find a way to get that information out.
I think the even more possibly important information is, would you use it? What would it take for, even just like, what's the minimum standard that would get you to switch or feel like you would be able not to have a car? What would it take? And that, because the problem with transit provision is it tends to be built around people not using it. They're not using it because it's not there. It's not there because they're not using it. There's no ability to assess what level would it have to be before people started using it. And the next thing you know, you'd have people, using it a lot. So that, and like, maybe would you want to live somewhere else if you were able to, for example? Although maybe City of St. John's doesn't want to hear that. But would you be able? Are there jobs that you would have taken had it not been for your inability to take those kind of questions, which are not as obvious as, are you taking it? Because are you taking it's the wrong question to ask. How would it change your life if you could? That's the question to pose.
Okay, I hate to cut everybody off, but does anybody have any last comments or questions before we wrap up for the night? Sounds good. All right. Okay. Well, I'd just like to thank everybody for coming out tonight. Thank you to our panelists for all your time and knowledge. Thank you to the audience for the conversations and great questions. And I know the city and Metrobus couldn't be here tonight. We tried really hard to get them here, but what can I say? And thank you to the other students involved with this, Kachai Tam and Abby Butler. And thank you to our instructor, Jeff Ducharme, for helping us all along the way. Thank you.